When Mike Carson pulled into Birchwood Lane, his pickup growled like a warning to the pristine cul-de-sac. His RV, a spotless black and silver rig with solar panels and military decals, rumbled behind him like a war elephant in a herd of lambs. Every curtain twitched, every porch light flicked on, and from one particularly manicured front lawn, a middle-aged woman in a floral bathrobe took a long disapproving sip from her coffee mug. Mike cut the engine and exhaled slowly. Quiet life, huh? He should have known that peace was always an illusion. Still, after 20 years of military service, a man could hope. He stepped out, stretched his shoulders, and began unhooking the trailer. From across the street, the woman in the bathrobe was still watching. She disappeared briefly, then reappeared with a small camera. No wave, no smile. Just a series of quick, deliberate clicks as she snapped photos of his truck, his license, plate, even the position of his recycling bins. Mike raised an eyebrow and waved politely. She didn't wave back. The next morning, before he'd even finished his first cup of coffee, a paper fluttered against his front door. It was a citation. Violation No. 1. Unauthorized vehicle. Oversized RV visible from the street. You have 24 hours to correct this issue or face escalating fines. The signature at the bottom, Karen Whitfield, HOA president. He chuckled. Less than 12 hours, and already they were at it. Mike wasn't surprised. His brother Tom, the sheriff, had warned him. That neighborhood's beautiful, Tom had said, but there's one landmine buried in every lawn. Karen Whitfield. She runs the HOA like it's a Cold War regime. Mike didn't mind rules. He respected structure, but he hated hypocrisy. He walked the block that evening and counted 3 RVs parked in driveways, 2 work vans with faded decals, and 1 bright orange Jeep with aftermarket lights. No citations on their doors. Interesting. He returned home and opened a black case in his garage. Not a weapon, not a tool, a camera. High definition, motion sensitive, infrared capable. He placed one near his front window, another by the garage, and one hidden under the bird bath, facing the street. If Karen wanted a game, he'd play, but by his rules. That night, just after 2 a.m., the first camera pinged. Karen, she crept across him, his lawn like a raccoon, flashlight in hand, notebook tucked under her arm. She measured the distance between his RV and the curb. She peeked under his tarp. She looked up into the camera lens and smiled. Mike rewound the footage twice. That smile didn't say, concerned neighbor. It said, control. The next morning, 2 more violations. Violation 2, improper flag display. Pole exceeds HOA height limit. Violation 3, exterior storage. Hose reel visible from the sidewalk. 3 violations in under 48 hours. That had to be a record, but Mike didn't get mad. He got meticulous. He pulled out a battered notebook and jotted down every citation, every observation, every moment caught on camera. He began timing Karen's patrols. She circled the block at exactly 9:12 a.m. every morning, and again at 2:03 p.m., down to the second. She spoke to no one, waved to no one, but she always had her clipboard and always ended her walk in front of Mike's driveway. She was trying to intimidate him, and that's when Mike decided he wouldn't just push back, he'd bait her. Let her dig the hole herself. He just needed to wait and let Karen prove exactly who she was to the wrong person. By the 3rd day, the violations weren't just arriving regularly. They were arriving strategically. Karen wasn't picking random targets. She was watching, logging, analyzing, Mike's behavior like a scientist observing a lab rat. That morning's letter was slid neatly under his doormat. Not taped, not pinned, slid. Someone had approached the door silently. Mike opened the envelope. Curious. Violation number 4. Unapproved mailbox paint color. Metallic grey is not within HOA palette standards. He stared at it, stunned. His mailbox? It had been like that when he bought the place. He even had a photo from the real estate listing. He shook his head. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was redefining them. He opened his laptop and pulled up the HOA's official website. The palette standards Karen cited weren't listed anywhere. No bylaws, no document updates. But he noticed something odd. A freshly uploaded PDF titled Supplemental Community Guidelines, June Revision. Mike checked the metadata. The file had been created just 11 hours ago, after he'd gone to bed. The rules were being rewritten in real time to target him. He scanned the document. No RVs parked in front of homes for more than 24 hours. No flagpoles over 7 feet tall. No reflective mailbox paints. No military tactical or survivalist themed decor. That last one made him laugh. His solar-powered lanterns, steel fire pit, and camo-colored garden chair weren't decorations. They were gear from real deployments. Now they were apparently threatening. Karen was escalating, so Mike got methodical. He began photographing every house on Birchwood Lane, quietly, respectfully, from the sidewalk. 3 homes had flagpoles taller than his. 4 had mailbox colors outside the listed palette. 1 had a full replica cannon from the Civil War on its lawn, rusting and massive. But none of those homes had citations taped to their door. No envelopes. Slid under their mat, only him. At 2:03 p.m., sharp as expected, Karen rounded the bend with her clipboard. Mike was sitting in a lawn chair, sipping iced tea, phone in hand. "Afternoon," he said, cool and friendly. Karen paused at the edge of his driveway. "Mr. Carson, I hope you've read the updated guidelines." "I have," he replied, not moving. "Read them twice, actually. Did you write them yourself?" She stiffened. "The board approved them." "Board of 1. Karen's smile faltered. "I was elected by a majority vote." Mike nodded slowly. "Funny, your last meeting minutes say only 3 people attended. One of them was your sister." Karen's smile vanished. She took a sharp step forward. "The rules are the rules. You agreed to them when you moved in." "No," Mike said. "I agreed to the original HOA charter. The one that doesn't mention mailbox shades or tactical lanterns." She took another step. "If you keep pushing this, I'll have to escalate the matter to county authorities. You're already on thin ice." Mike leaned forward, locked eyes with her, and smiled. "Good, I hope you do." Karen faltered. For the first time since he moved in, she looked unsettled. She stepped back, muttered something into her phone, and spun on her heel. That night, another notice appeared. No envelope this time. It was nailed to his fence post, like a medieval proclamation. Final warning. Non-compliance will result in legal action and potential referral to law enforcement. Mike stared at it under the porch light. She wanted to push him into a corner, wanted him to snap, wanted him to react. Instead, he walked into his garage, opened a drawer, and took out a small metal case. Inside, a USB drive labeled Karen, Phase 1. He plugged it into his laptop and queued up the footage. Karen would escalate? Good. She had no idea who she was playing with. 3 days passed without a single new citation. Mike knew better than to feel relieved. It was too quiet. Even Karen's patrols had stopped. The familiar 9:12 a.m. march, clipboard in hand, gone. No 2:03 p.m. circuit either. The neighborhood had entered an eerie calm, like the silence before a sniper's shot. Then came the cupcake. It was left in the center of his welcome mat, neatly placed on a porcelain saucer, topped with baby blue frosting and rainbow sprinkles. Almost cartoonishly cheerful. A folded note sat beneath the plate, scrolled in perfect cursive. No hard feelings. Sweeten up and play nice. A friend, Mike didn't touch it. He carried the plate to his backyard, using metal tongs, and placed it on his workbench under the motion light. Then he leaned in. Something glinted beneath the frosting. He grabbed a screwdriver, peeled back the sugary dome, and froze. Dead center, half buried in icing, was the curled body of a wasp. Not crushed, baked in. Mike slowly exhaled. This wasn't a prank. This was a message. And it was personal. He carried the saucer to his security table and photographed every angle. Macro shots, timestamp overlays, gloved handling. He bagged the cupcake and note into a sealed evidence pouch. Paranoia was something he'd been trained to resist. But this was ritualistic. A psychological tactic. The message was clear. We're watching. You're alone. Sweeten up. Or get stung. But Karen had made one mistake. She left a fingerprint. The note had a smudge, just barely visible in the right light. Mike scanned it with a small portable reader he kept from his defense contracting days. The print was partial, but distinct. He sent it to Tom. 30 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Sheriff, Tom Carson. Prints a match. Belongs to a Diane Whitfield. Karen's niece. Works part-time at the bakery on Fairgrove. Mike stared at the message. She'd weaponized her own family for psychological warfare. He texted back, "You up for a deeper dig?" Tom replied with a single word, "Always." Later that evening, Mike took a walk around the block. For show. He waved to a few hesitant neighbors. Most averted their eyes. But one older gentleman with a cane gave a subtle nod. When Mike passed Karen's house, the curtains snapped shut like guillotine blades. He smirked. They were rattled. Back home, he checked the cameras. Rewound 12 hours. There, at 4:17 a.m., a shadow crept onto his porch. Female, slim build, hoodie, gloves, dropped the cupcake, placed the note, left. She looked back only once, directly into the lens hidden in the garden gnome. Bingo. The next morning, Karen was back on her patrol, clipboard in hand, fake smile fixed like armor. She passed Mike's driveway, slowed, then stopped. Mike was waiting in his lawn chair. "Morning," he said. "Lovely cupcake, by the way." Her eyes flickered. Just for a moment. "Excuse me." Sprinkles were a nice touch. Shame about the wasp. Karen froze. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, voice clipped. Mike leaned back and held up his phone. On the screen, a freeze frame of her niece placing the plate on his mat. Karen's lips parted, just slightly, but no sound came out. Then she pivoted and walked away without another word. Mike watched her vanish behind her rose-covered fence. He didn't need to chase her. She was unraveling, and she didn't know the worst part yet. He hadn't even played his real hand. 2 mornings later, a thick ivory envelope arrived, hand-delivered, and sealed with a gold-embossed HOA emblem. An oak tree surrounded by barbed ivy. Mike opened it. Carefully. Notice of emergency board hearing. Resident Michael Carson is hereby summoned to appear before the Birchwood HOA Disciplinary Committee regarding ongoing violations, neighbor complaints, and disorderly conduct. Failure to attend may result in formal legal referral and immediate lien action. Time: 6:90 p.m. Sharp date: tonight. Location: Birchwood Clubhouse, side conference room. He couldn't help but chuckle. Emergency board hearing. Huh? Karen was trying to make it sound like a courtroom, when it was just a glorified clubhouse, with stale coffee and broken blinds. But still, he showed up, dressed sharp, dark button down, military creased slacks, boots polished to a mirror. He arrived 5 minutes early just to watch them sweat. Inside, the side room had been transformed into a parody of authority. A folding table stretched across the front, where Karen sat like a queen flanked by 2 silent board members, who Mike recognized as her sister, and an elderly neighbor who frequently yelled at squirrels. A row of mismatched chairs faced them. Only 3 were occupied. Residents who glanced at Mike, then quickly looked away. Karen cleared her throat. "Mr. Carson, please sit," he did calmly, crossing one leg over the other. "Evening. I brought my own copy of the HOA charter. Thought we might actually use it." Karen ignored the jab and tapped a thick stack of paper. "These are the complaints we've received from neighbors. Intimidation, aggression, unauthorized surveillance." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Surveillance? On my own property?" Karen pursed her lips. "We also have security footage of your camera equipment. Residents feel watched. Unsafe." Mike pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it on the table. "Funny you should mention that. This drive has footage of a woman trespassing on my property at 4:17 a.m. to deliver a contaminated food item with a fingerprint match." Karen stiffened. The board members shifted. "I believe the person involved is your niece," he added, calmly. The air turned heavy. Karen's hand trembled ever so slightly as she flipped a page. "We're not here to discuss cupcakes. We're here to discuss behavior. Hostile behavior." Mike leaned forward, voice still low, still calm. "I've received 6 citations in 9 days. Citations for mailbox paint, for garden chairs, for the length of my flagpole, while other neighbors with identical setups received nothing. I have documented evidence of these double standards, complete with timestamps and side-by-side comparisons." Karen tried to cut him off, but he continued. "Furthermore, I have evidence of tampering with HOA guidelines. The so-called supplemental community rules were authored and uploaded the same night I received citations based on them. Metadata confirms it. You rewrote the rulebook after the so-called violations occurred." One of the board members, Karen's sister, opened her mouth to speak, but Mike wasn't finished, and finally, he said, raising his phone, "I have a recording. You might want to hear this." He tapped play. Karen's voice poured out of the speaker, crackly but unmistakable. "He doesn't belong here. This isn't a trailer park. If he wants to play soldier, he can do it somewhere else. We'll keep piling violations until he cracks. Then I'll call the sheriff myself." Gasps filled the room. The elderly neighbor dropped his clipboard. Karen's face drained of color. Mike stood. "I'm not here to play soldier," he said. "I'm here to live. I've served my country. I've earned peace. And I will not be bullied in my own home." He turned to walk out, pausing only once. "Oh, and about calling the sheriff?" He smiled. "You should. He's my brother." Karen didn't speak. She couldn't. The morning after the hearing was unusually still. Mike woke before sunrise, brewed his coffee, and sat on the porch, watching the fog roll over Birchwood Lane like ghostly fingers. He half expected the quiet to break with sirens, or maybe another cupcake. Instead, at exactly 8:06 a.m., a cruiser pulled up to his curb. Sheriff Tom Carson stepped out, broad-shouldered, baseball cap pulled low. He gave Mike a nod and walked up the path like he'd done 100 times as a kid, back when they were just 2 barefoot brothers growing up in a trailer in Dunlap County. Mike grinned. You're early. Tom raised a brow. You said it was urgent. Mike handed him the flash drive. Everything's on here. Citations, surveillance, audio from the clubhouse, even the cupcake. Tom blinked. Wait, did you say cupcake? Mike gave him the short version. Tom's face darkened. Jesus. That's criminal intimidation. Possibly reckless endangerment too. Thought you'd say that. Tom plugged the drive into his cruiser's laptop and watched the footage. By the time he reached the clubhouse audio, his jaw was tight. When Karen's voice said, "We'll keep piling violations until he cracks," Tom leaned back with a long, slow exhale. She really said that, he muttered. Out loud, in a meeting. Mike nodded. Like I told you, she thinks she's untouchable. Tom shut the laptop. Not anymore. They drove together in silence to the Birchwood HOA office. A repurposed maintenance shed, painted beige, with fake columns screwed onto the sides. Karen's Prius was already parked outside. Tom knocked once, firm. Karen opened the door smiling, but the second she saw Mike and recognized Tom in uniform, the color drained from her face. "Sheriff Carson," she said tightly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Tom held up the flash drive. "Mind if we talk inside?" She hesitated. "Of course." Inside, the air was stiff with lemon disinfectant. Karen motioned toward a tiny conference table. Mike didn't sit. Tom pulled out a printed transcript from the drive and set it gently on the table. "This your voice?" he asked. Karen's eyes flicked down, reading the damning words. Her lips thinned. "I don't recall saying those exact things," she said carefully. Tom tilted his head. "We have the recording. It's admissible. And your niece's fingerprints are on the food item left on Mike's doorstep. We're looking at criminal harassment, coordinated misconduct, abuse of authority under a private charter." Karen's smile cracked. "That's a stretch." Tom stepped forward. "I'd say building a fake rulebook, retroactively citing someone, encouraging others to trespass, and doing it all while weaponizing your HOA title qualifies. Want me to keep going?" She looked like she was shrinking inside her own skin. "Now," Tom said, calm and clear, "you have two choices. 1. Resign from the board immediately. 2. We open a formal investigation and forward everything to the DA. Karen's breathing was shallow. Her gaze darted to Mike. He just crossed his arms and said nothing. Finally, she whispered, "I'll resign." "Effective immediately," Tom said. Karen nodded, trembling. "Yes." Mike turned to leave but paused in the doorway. "Oh, and maybe apologize to the neighbors while you're at it. They deserve better." Karen didn't respond. She just stared at the table like it had swallowed her. Outside, Mike exhaled deeply for the first time in days. "Think she'll try anything else?" Tom asked. Mike looked toward the neighborhood, the manicured lawns, the pristine sidewalks. "Not herself," he said. "But she's the type that doesn't act alone." Tom nodded. "Then we stay ready." Because while Karen had fallen, Birchwood's shadows were longer than anyone realized, and someone else was already watching. It started with a sound. Late one night, 2 days after Karen's resignation, Mike sat in his garage, converting old military gear into a home weather station when he heard it. A single deliberate click, like a latch, then a faint rattle of chain link metal. He froze. No wind, no rain, just that soft, mechanical shake. Again, his side fence, the one facing the alley, the one that shouldn't rattle because it had industrial-grade deadbolts and anti-lift bars drilled into the frame. Mike eased out the garage's side door, flashlight in hand, Glock holstered at his hip. He didn't need it, not yet. He just wanted to see. He crept along the grass barefoot. Each step practiced. Quiet. The beam of his light moved over trash bins, the shed, then landed on the fence, and stopped. The padlock had been cut. Clean slice. Bolt cutters. No doubt. Mike dropped to one knee and scanned for prints, boot treads, anything. A gum wrapper, a twisted bit of wire, fresh footprints, narrow tread, someone light, and fast. He followed them down the alley, but they disappeared after 10 yards into the dry gravel, where the surface was too disturbed to trace. He returned, locked the fence again, with a new industrial shackle, and went straight to his security system. Playback revealed a hooded figure, crouching near the fence at 1:37 a.m. They moved with practiced grace. No hesitation. In and out in 14 seconds. Too fast for Karen. This was someone new. Mike enhanced the frame. On the intruder's backpack was a patch, faded but visible. A gold oak leaf inside a circle of barbed ivy. The HOA crest. His blood ran cold. He dug into his old files. The HOA's original founding paperwork, buried in their bylaws, listed 6 charter members. Karen had been one. 2 were deceased. 1 had moved out. That left 2 more. Daniel Croft, board secretary, quiet, paranoid. Cheryl Brookman, treasurer, retired accountant, lived 2 doors down from Karen. Mike had seen both of them at that ridiculous hearing, but they hadn't spoken a word. Suddenly, it made sense. Karen was only the face. The power ran deeper. Mike printed the still image of the intruder. Then he knocked on Cheryl's door. She answered in a robe, mascara smeared like she hadn't slept in days. "Oh, hello, Mike." He held up the photo. "Know anything about this?" Cheryl blinked. "Is that?" "Someone on your team broke into my property. I'm giving you one chance to explain." She glanced nervously down the hall. Then, she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Mike stepped closer. "I'm already in this, so either help me or get out of the way." She hesitated. Then slowly, she opened the door wider and let him in. Inside, her walls were covered with HOA paperwork, maps, handwritten notes, a timeline of when each homeowner had moved in. It looked more like a war room than a living room. They called it the preservation circle, she said. Karen was the enforcer, but Daniel, he's the one who built the system. Citations, anonymous complaints, even the fake rules. He did it all. Why? To purify Birchwood. No veterans, no renters, no immigrants, just their version of perfect. Mike clenched his jaw. So Karen was just their guard dog. Cheryl nodded. Now that she's gone, Daniel's taken over, quietly. He's paranoid, but dangerous. And he doesn't like being challenged. Mike stared at the surveillance photo again. Then I guess it's time someone knocked on his door. Mike didn't knock. He knew Daniel Croft wouldn't answer the door for polite conversation. Not now. Not after midnight. Not after what Cheryl had just revealed. Instead, he walked the perimeter of Daniel's house, noting every camera, every reinforced window, every odd bump behind the rose bushes that looked suspiciously like a buried wire. Daniel Croft had turned his home into a fortress, and that told Mike something crucial. Daniel was afraid of being exposed, afraid of someone like Mike, someone who didn't scare easy. Back at his own home, Mike geared up, non-lethal tools only, body cam, recording mic, infrared flashlight, and a tiny signal scanner to detect jammers. He wasn't going in armed unless things went sideways. At exactly 2:14 a.m., while the neighborhood slept, Mike returned. This time, he slipped around back through the greenbelt that lined the east end of Birchwood. There, behind a cluster of hedges, was a metal utility box with a faint digital hum. Mike grinned. Bingo! He popped the cover. Inside, Daniel's makeshift surveillance hub blinked silently. Small but sophisticated. He pulled out a pocket scrambler, jammed the signal for 60 seconds, and moved fast. He scaled the back fence, padded across the deck, and opened the unlocked crawl space beneath the house. Most people never thought to lock that. Inside the crawl space, he found what he expected: a hatch, a reinforced trapdoor, buried beneath plastic sheeting. Mike knocked twice. Silence, then. The sound of metal shifting inside. Slow, deliberate. "Daniel," Mike said, calm but firm. "We need to talk." No answer. "I know about the preservation circle, about the false violations, the rewrites, the intimidation. Karen talked. Cheryl confirmed it. And I've got evidence stacked higher than your HOA dues." Still nothing. Mike paused. Then, "I'm not here to break the law, Daniel. I'm here to expose the ones who already have. You can walk away now. Or I knock." Louder. The silence stretched. Then suddenly, the trapdoor cracked open an inch. Daniel's pale face appeared, sweat gleaming on his forehead, glasses askew. He looked smaller than Mike remembered, mousy, not the mastermind he'd pictured. But his eyes were sharp, alert, dangerous. "You don't understand," Daniel said, voice trembling. "This neighborhood, it's not just property, it's order, it's discipline. If we let people like you in..." Mike cut him off. "People like me," Daniel hesitated. "I served. I pay my dues. I take care of my home. You just don't like that I won't bow." Daniel's jaw twitched. "You're tearing apart the system, undermining everything we built. You built a cult in khakis," Mike snapped. "You used fake laws and fear to control people. That ends now." Daniel's eyes darted to the side. Mike followed his gaze and spotted a hidden switch on the wall. He lunged. Too late. Daniel slapped the switch. From above, floodlights exploded to life. Alarms blared through the house. A recorded voice shouted, "Security breach. Intruder detected. Authorities notified." Mike dashed out the crawl space and onto the lawn just as a side door slammed open. But it wasn't police. It was two men. In black HOA security uniforms. Not real law enforcement. Private. Unauthorized. They rushed him. Mike dropped into a defensive stance, dodged the first, and swept the legs of the second. The first tackled him, but Mike rolled, using the man's weight to slam him against a planter box. Both went down, groaning. Mike stood over them, breathing hard. Blue and red lights lit up the street a second later. Real law enforcement, Tom. The sheriff stepped out of the cruiser, hand on his weapon. "Step back, Mike." Mike raised his hands. "All yours, brother." Tom stared at the two imposters. Private security on residential property without clearance. Unregistered uniforms. This just turned federal. Mike smiled through bloodied knuckles. Daniel's last defense had just collapsed. 2 weeks later, Birchwood Lane looked different. Quiet, yes. Peaceful, mostly. But there was something else in the air. Watchfulness, like the neighborhood itself, was holding its breath, waiting to see if the poison had really been purged. Karen had gone silent after her resignation. Rumors swirled. She'd moved in with a cousin, fled to another HOA in Nevada, maybe even started a blog about patriot neighborhood values. No one knew for sure. Daniel, however, had not been so lucky. The sheriff's report, spearheaded by Tom, backed by Mike's ironclad evidence, led to 6 charges, including harassment, unlawful surveillance, impersonating law enforcement, and criminal conspiracy under false authority. The media caught wind fast. HOA power trip turns. Criminal in Birchwood splashed across local headlines. One outlet dubbed Daniel the gatekeeper of suburbia, not in a flattering way. HOA meetings were suspended. Board members quit. Cheryl surprisingly stayed on, this time as an interim reformist, backed cautiously by the neighbors she once helped oppress. But Mike knew better. This wasn't over, not yet. He sat quietly in the community center, surrounded by rows of folding chairs and curious residents. A full re-election was happening tonight, and for the first time, every seat was filled. Cheryl stood at the podium, flanked by two empty chairs, marked chairperson and vice chair. She cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. Birchwood deserves better. Tonight, you'll vote for who that should be. A voice from the back called. We want Mike! Scattered applause broke out. Then chants. Mike! 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 Raised a hand. I appreciate it, but I didn't run. I'm not a politician. Tom, standing at the back, smirked. You act like you have a choice, big brother. Another neighbor stood. You took them down. You protected all of us. You earned it. Cheryl looked right at him. If you want the nomination, the floor is open. Mike hesitated. Every muscle in his body itched to say no. He didn't want power. He wanted peace. But peace, he realized, needed guardians. I'll do it, he said at last. Cheers erupted. Ballots passed quickly, and within the hour, Mike Carson was officially elected chairman of the Birchwood HOA. Position once used to intimidate, now reclaimed to protect. After the meeting, Cheryl approached quietly. You should know, she said. Daniel had backup plans, contingency files, copies. There may be more. Mike didn't flinch. Then we'll smoke them out. She looked around nervously. They weren't just after you. They were after your property. There's something else buried under your home. Something Daniel didn't want found. Mike narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? She slipped him a folded blueprint. Old, faded, but unmistakable. Before Birchwood, this land was federal training ground. The HOA was built on top of old tunnels, communications bunkers. I think Daniel was using one. Mike opened the blueprint fully. His backyard was marked with a red X. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I thought it was just history, she said. Now I'm not so sure. As she walked away, Mike stood frozen, the paper flapping in the breeze. There was more. Beneath the surface, literally, he thought the battle was over. But now, it looked like the war was just beginning. And if Birchwood had secrets buried in the soil, Mike was ready to dig them up, one layer at a time. Because this wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a battleground.